Assalamu alaikum students, how are you all? Hope that you are having an amazing day. I'm Muhammad Naeem Amin Bhatti, and today the topic of our discussion will be the later part of The Sun Also Rises. We have discussed earlier the first 9 chapters of this novel, and now we will discuss its second part. It's from chapter number 10 to chapter number 19, and this study session will basically cover the following topics, the three major points actually. The very first one is the summary from chapter number 10 to chapter number 19. It will help us to understand the text and dialogues of the characters which have been presented in the chapter number 10 to chapter number 19. The second point will discuss the critical commentary of this later part from chapter number 10 to 19, and through the critical commentary we will analyze the characters, the art of characterization, their dialogue delivery, and the hidden meanings which the text will offer to us. And at our third point we will discuss the course analysis of the three major characters, here Mr. Jake, and after that we will discuss Lady Brett Ashley, and the last one Robert Cohen. So this will be an interesting type of lecture. Stay tuned with me. So very first slide here it will be the summary of chapter number 10. As I am going to relate it with the earlier parts of The Sun Also Rises, the ninth chapter was end up when they were making, the characters of this novel were making their plan to be at Pamplona, to be there for their outing, and the three major characters, the two major and one minor character, the Bill, then Jake and Cohen, they hire a car to their destination. They reach there because they are going to have an outing there. And after Second World War there was nothing but to be at different places, because the characters of lost generations used to do outing and get together at many places. So they all gathered at three of them, they gathered at Pamplona. And after that Cohen is nervous because he does not know how to face Bill and Jake, because Cohen has spent many days with Lady Brett Ashley, and according to him, apparently Mr. Bill and Jake was not known about that, but the fact is that they already know the truth. So because this novel revolves about the lost generations, and Robert Cohen is basically a type of person to flirt with the girl Lady Brett Ashley. That's why he was hiding this secret from Bill and Jake. But they know about it that he was on holidays with Brett in San Sebastian, and that's why three of them are not talking about that, but inward their mind, inward their psychological situations, they do know about the truth very well. So he doesn't believe Brett and Mike will arrive later that night. So that is the situation of Cohen in the summary of chapter 10. And basically Cohen has an air of superior knowledge that irritates Bill and Jake, because they already know the truth, and Cohen thinks that they doesn't know about Brett Ashley and Cohen stay in the San Sebastian. But that's why Cohen thinks that he is superior in knowledge from them, that he has some secret in his mind and heart to told to them. But the statistics says that Mr. Cohen was wrong at that point, because it was a permanent destruction of their friendship, like the Jake and Cohen had, because due to Brett Ashley it was going to be destroyed. Here in the chapter number 11, Bill and Jake decided to have a bus ride towards the town of Burgate, and the bus was filled with the Basque peasants. Basque peasants are the people who were living on the countryside of France and Spain. That was a collaborated area of both of these countries, and they shared the area both very well in between the France and Spain. And both of them, Mr. Bill and Jake, both of them inwardly think that Burgate people were not, Burgate peasant were not very polite to them, and they were drinking the wines, they were laughing in a very loud manners. So that's why the Basques were not the civilized people. Inside, that is appreciation for the Basque people, because still they were good enough from them. They were not even like you can say the not faithless to with their friends at least, and both of them had a type of faithlessness with the Cohen, and that's why the writer want to describe to us the situation that apparently sometimes the people looks ugly have inside the sincere hearts, but some people apparently looks like very clean have faithless heart in them. Summary of chapter 12 reveals to us that Jake wakes up early at that town and dresses and goes outside because they are there for trout fishing, and they had a plan for that. And he digs for worms. He gets some earthworms from here to catch the fishes, and then he goes towards the stream, and here he start fishing. When Jake goes back inside to his hotel, Bill begins to joke about the irony and pity. Basically, Bill had no specific intention for these jokes, but Jake feels that he was basically irritating him. So he encourages Jack to say only things that are the ironic or pitiful. The basic ironic and pitiful thing was that Cohen has several nights stay in Saint Sebastian with the girlfriend of Jake, Brett Ashley. So that was not a friendship, but it was a friendlessness at that time, because Jake was very sincere to the Cohen, but Cohen was not sincere. Even he was not sincere with the Jake. Reason was that he has spent nights at Saint Sebastian with his girlfriend. In chapter number 13, Jake receives a letter from Mike, who was telling him that the Brett had fainted on the train. That was very irritating also for Jake. So because he was very caring for Brett Ashley, and he doesn't want any type of harm to Brett Ashley, that's why he thinks that if there is something which is harmful for Brett Ashley, that will be harmful for Jake also. They are in San Sebastian for the 3 days, and Jake told to them, Mike and Brett, to came towards them, or he will be there at San Sebastian, because immediately he want to meet with Brett Ashley, and wouldn't arrive. They says that they will wouldn't arrive in Pamplona until the Wednesday. So Mr. Jake was in a very hurriedly watching for, or was in the way towards the Wednesday, that when the Wednesday will come and he will see the Brett Ashley. So that is a type of sincerity with the Brett Ashley from Jake towards her. In chapter 14, Jake returns to his room that night very drunk. He was very drunk because there were a number of reasons for drinking. He was drunk due to the faithlessness of Brett Ashley. He was drunk because he was not with the Brett. He was drunk because he was in love with the Brett, but he couldn't spend the nights as the other people were doing with the Brett Ashley. He was above all drunk that God has given him a lot of damage after the World War. So he hears Brett and Mike laughing as they go to bed. They were drinking also, and they were laughing at some sort of talkings, and laying in the bed, Jake reflects that the women make the swell friends. He is of the opinion now that the woman can be at upper edge if she doesn't had any type of specific things that she wants, and especially from Jake she couldn't have anything. Even she couldn't have any type of player from Jake. That's why she was with the Mike, and Mr. Jake was feeling very jealous from Mike because Brett was with him. Because a man has to be in a love with a woman to be friends with her. And the writer is not of the opinion that the men are the only person in the on this earth that who are the faithful to the other one or sincere to the other one. But in the case of Mr. Jake, it seems that he is the victim of circumstances. He is not in his fully control to, or he is not aware of Brett's intentions now, and that's why he want to describe his friendship to the Brett, but he is not able to do so because he has lost his the power of sexuality, his power to satisfy the women. That's why he was not in a way to describe Brett his intentions. So he was drinking very much at that night. In chapter 15, on that Sunday, July 6, at noon, the exploding of rockets was an announcement that was for the beginning of the fiesta. A fiesta was a big fair there, and it was basically a fair in which there were different and lot of competitions there, especially the bullfighting, and all of these characters were there to enjoy that announcement, and the square fills with the celebrants shouting and drinking wine. They were shouting, and Bill and Jake and other characters like Brett Ashley and Mike, they are well there were there, and they were laughing and drinking wines and at the start of that fair fiesta, and musicians were playing drums and fifes, and it was a very gay scene at that time that all the people were enjoying the company of each other. In chapter 16, it rains in the morning, and leaving Pamplona foggy and dull. So that comes a message from the American ambassador for Mr. Pedro Romero, who was a bullfighter and a young athlete in the fair fiesta. And Brett Ashley was in love with Pedro Romero also because physically he was looks very fine. So due to his looks, Brett Ashley was at once with in love with him, and she wanted to spend nights with him, and she wanted to have his love. So that's why she was with him. Pedro Romero and Mike, Bill Cohen and Jake, all of them were thinking that Brett Ashley is a lady, is a type of lady who is in the form of that he always seeks for players and nothing at all. But their intentions may be wrong, and she proved them wrong when she left Pedro Romero, and she told them that Pedro Romero doesn't want to marry with her. And Pedro Romero goes towards the hotel, and he fears that the foreigners will corrupt Romero. So, but that was a turning point because Pedro Romero left there. After that, in chapter 17, Jake meets with Mike and Bill at a bar. They both of them, like Bill and Jake, told to Mike that Brett Ashley was in love with the Romero. But Edna, a friend of Bill, is also with them, who is in the favor of women, that women might be sincere to the men if men deserve the respect. And Mike and Bill have been tossed out of a cafe and nearly causing a brawl among the English and the American tourists. They talk about the Brett Ashley, they talk about the changing scenarios of the world, they talk about the wine, they talk about the fiesta. There was a lot of talk among these characters, and then they left from there. In chapter 18, Cohen Lou basically who loses the trust on Brett Ashley, and he thinks that she is only a rolling stone, so that's why he leaves the Pamplona. At that time, Brett meets everyone else at the cafe, and she reports that Romero looks quite bad after his beating. Like that she has other plans regarding the Romero, and Romero has another plan regarding the Brett. So that's why all of these characters were happy to listen that there is no more such relation between Romero and Brett Ashley, but that he plans to bullfighting anyway. Mike remarks that Brett's got bullfighter, that Brett will be married with a bullfighter, but he was proved wrong at that point. She had a Jew named Cohen, but he turned out badly. That was the comment of Mike about Brett Ashley, that first she tried to trap Cohen, but Cohen was not an easy trap for him, an easy prey for her, and after that she has got a bullfighter as her prey. So the desire of a player for Brett Ashley has been shown here. In chapter 19, the next day, Mike, Bill, and Jake share a car at Bayonne, and after they get drunk and drive to Saint Jean de Luz to drop Mike off. They still are in a nervous situation of mind. Their psychological condition isn't well at that point. That all of these characters are thinking that Brett Ashley will consider them at all. Jake says goodbye to Bill at the train station in Bayonne, but at that point he realized that Brett was only a rolling stone, and she will decide her future on her own arms. After completing this summary analysis, we are going to have the critical commentary analysis of the chapter number 10. We will turn to our pages towards chapter number 10 again, that Bill and Jake avoid confronting their own shortcoming. Both of these characters are discussing in different manner Brett Ashley, but both of them know about the situation, that Brett will hardly agree for Jake or Bill at all. And they also mock Cohen on this point, because he was not a faithful friend at all. He was just a decisive and cunning friend for them, because Lady Brett Ashley was the girlfriend of Jake, and Cohen has spent the time with her in Saint Sebastian. That's why Bill and Jake were not considering him a good person. And because Cohen was Jewish, so there is a thought in Christianity that Jewish person are decisive and very cunning person. Jake seems aware that their contempt for Cohen functions as a way to avoid the confronting of their contempt for themselves. So that's why both of these characters decide to mock Cohen, and Bill and Jake told to Cohen that he has not done well for them. He has deceived them for in the manner of Brett Ashley. If we talk about the critical commentary of chapter number 11, we will come to know that Bill and Jake's fishing trip was a calming and a beautiful experience for them, and they were very calm at that point when they used to trap the fish, the trout fish and different varieties of fish. And it was basically a hobby of Jake, and that's why it was a greatest achievement for him to be there. And what a nice recept from the basically the present and disenchantment throughout the much of this novel, that it has been critically analyzed by Hemingway, that he describes the nature of the character, he describes the habits of the character, he describes the faithfulness of the character throughout this novel. And also the aimlessness of the lost generations, the cynical descendants of the lost generations, the gloominess of the lost generation, and what to do. That was a question that was begging answer at that point after the World War I. That was a lack of activities for them, that they even doesn't know that what to do next in their lives. So that the characterizes their other activities is curiously absent during the trip. And approximately they are the two characters who seem to more near than the nature. They are near to the nature, so that's why they were at fishing spot and they were enjoying very much there. In chapter 12, if we talk about its critical commentary analysis, we think about the war that was involved a lot of time huddling the clothes together, and each and every person here, each and every character here in this novel has been affected by the war very much. So helplessly in dugouts under the enemy bombardments, they used to deliver their time, they used to spend their time under the bombardment also, and they used to spend their time in get together also. They were of the opinion that all of these characters were of the opinion that to somehow, to some extent, they should be lessen the griefs of the war that they have gotten, because each and every person was wounded physically or mentally by the war at that time. And especially Bill's joke about being taken for faggot as just such an affirmation, that was a quite ironic joke for Jake, and he wants to underline the fact that he loves Jake very much. And Jake also thinks that Bill and he are the best friends at all. And Bill was basically pretty much good and was more sincere than Cohen, because Cohen was a decisive person for Jake. If we talk about the chapter number 13, we come to know that the Jake's departure from brigade to meet the Brett was his one of the finest decision at that point, because the analysis shows that they both loved to each other, but Brett Ashley was not so much interested in Jake, because Jake was wounded crucially during the war, and he was not able to fulfill the sexual desires of Brett Ashley. So that's why she was not interested in Jake. But at the other hand, if we say, he reaches out to the Pamplona, and despite his love of fishing, he left the fishing and he was at once with the Brett Ashley during that time, because his hobby was not important to him, but his love was very much important to him. So his desires for Brett disrupts his normal system of values. He desires that Brett was very much near and dear to him, and still he loves her. And even at the end of that novel, he used to love her, and he have a good heart for Brett Ashley. But if we see the values of his desires, his sympathies with the Brett, they were countless. In chapter number 14, if we give the critical commentary analysis, we see here the Getting your money's worth. That was a dialogue by Jake, which have a very deep meaning here, that every person wants money, and money is the most important truth of their life. And money has become a substitute for his generation, that the lost generation were in desires to get more and more money. So that's why Jake says that getting your money's worth, that is always worthful to get money. And replacing emotions, money was replacing each and everything. It was replacing emotion, it was basically replacing the primary structures of human relationship. It was replacing the friendship. It was replacing even the love and the emotions of the people. So that's why Jake says these lines, these important lines, that the getting your money's worth, money has become a substitute for all of our generation. If we talk about the chapter number 15, we come to know about the fiesta. Is basically a celebration at the Bacchanalian celebration, and with Brett playing a symbolic goddess of sexuality and fertility. Here we come to know about the truth of Brett Ashley, that she was desired only to have affected towards the other male people only sexually or for the sake of her own pleasure. The drunken revelry is clearly meant to contrast the basically regulated social atmosphere of the France, because France is the country which is very advanced in these traditions, that the people used to drink in a very excess manner. There they used to drink the wines, they have the source of pleasures according to them, there are the love affairs, and especially people are very independent in their relations in France. So it has been described by Hemingway that it is a regulated social atmosphere of France which has been depicted in this novel. In chapter number 16, the behavior of Mike is the top on the discussion, that his behavior towards Cohen was at the peak of its brutality, because Cohen was not only he has not only deceived Jake, but he also has deceived the Mike. Being the engagement partner of Miss Brett Ashley, Mike was very much uh, at the angry at Mr. Cohen, because he has spent a time at Saint Sebastian, and he was of the opinion that I should get rid of Cohen, and Brett should also get rid of Cohen. And he insults to his face about being Jewish, that the Jewish are very cunning people, as I have described earlier, that the Christianity has its own views about Jewish people. And the relationship between the women and men in this novel are riddled with the conflict, that in the very first purpose to write this novel is to describe the values of relationship between the men and women, as apparent in Brett's quarrels with her various lovers. Like she had a quarrel with Jake, the very first lover in this novel. Then she had a quarrel with Cohen. Then she had a quarrel with the Mike. Then she had the other relations with other friends, and even the Romero also. So that's why if we talk about only one lady, she has her relationship between the among the number of people in her life. And now about Brett Ashley, it has been described that she was only hungry with the relationship of the various male in this novel. In chapter number 13, Brett acts as something of the femme fatale. Femme fatale means the women who makes the other persons attempted to attentive towards her, or who seek the attention of the other person or the other male person. In this chapter, femme fatale is basically the women who wants a lot of relationship with the male persons, has been described here, and she has been also described as a goddess of sexuality and the goddess of we can say that as the goddess of fertility also. Whatever her unrestricted, unrestricted sexually desires or sexuality means to her, that was very much concerned with her relations also. It clearly functions as the destructive and corrupting influence on the man. That though she was at a time for the sake of pleasure, but she was at that time a source of destruction for the male members of this novel, the male characters of this novel, the male members of their community and their friend circle at that time. In second last chapter, we come to know that Belmont, the bullfighter, is a symbol of the entire lost generation, and Romero is the symbol of success and continuity in this novel. So Belmont has no purpose in this current time and place, and he achieved great fame in his younger days. So that's why he was considered as the one of the major bullfighters in France, and many considered him among the greatest bullfighters at that time. That is the description of that bullfighter. And at last, we comes to know that all is well that ends well, according to Shakespeare. That was true, and that was ended as badly as Brett's other sexual relationship. So this was not a good ending at all. That was so bad ending for the other characters. But I have discussed this quotation from Shakespeare, that all is well that ends well. The good part or the well-being part in this novel was that the Brett Ashley was exposed so badly among the friend circle, that each and every person in their friend circle was known to her now, and she was not much prominent among them. That Jake also thought that though he loves her, but he was not in a position to be with her at all, because she was changing the boyfriends, she was changing her lover and admirers from time to time, and she was deceiving her lovers so badly. So that was a bad ending, and Jake has not stopped suffering, because he cannot have Brett, though he loves her, but he still was in a continuous form of confusion, that either the Brett was wrong or right, but at the end he decides that she was not right lady for him. But he seems to have reached a more realistic appreciation, and he was basically well aware of situation of his own, that he could live, or he can live without Brett Ashley, and she was not a thing which is so necessary, or she is not a person which was so necessary for him. So his situation was now as a like a calm warrior who is escaped out from the war or the battleground, and he was thinking that it is good to him that Brett Ashley isn't with him at all. Now we discuss the quote from Jake Barnes, that he says that, "Was you ever in love with her? Sure, for how long? Off and on for the hell of a long time." Yeah, this one, the off and on for a hell of a long time, was from the Jake that he loves to Brett Ashley. And once he was charged with his he was trapped in her charm, and she was a very cruel lady to him, that she doesn't even accepted him as a form of lover, but she was like a friend person with Jake. And because Jake has some kind of less powers towards the sexuality, and that's why he was not able to fulfill the desires of Lady Brett Ashley. As Bill and Jake rest after the trout fishing, they talk to each other the above given lines, and Jake was because from head to feet in the love of Brett Ashley, so that's why he talks to Bill in a very clear manner that he and Brett Ashley were in a love at a time of their life. And he Bill asks to Jake that were you ever in love with her? Sure. For how long? That and reply by the Jake was that off and on, for a hell of a long time. That I was in love with her for a long time. They talk about the life and love, and especially Brett. In this novel, especially if we talk about the male characters, they had the necessary mode of communication, the necessary topic of communication, the necessary talk about the Brett always, because she was so beautiful for them that they couldn't avoid to talk about her. Apparently, all of the men in the novel feel attracted to her, and that's why we have called her the goddess of sexuality and goddess of fertility. Jake admits his long standing feelings for Brett. He told to Bill that he often used to thought about Lady Brett Ashley, that she was very beautiful and she had a charm, she had a beauty, she had the such looks that couldn't be left without any type of praise and without any type of talking. So that's why Jake was at that point of view that he admits his long standing feelings for the Brett, that she was a necessary part of his feelings. If, on the other hand, we talk about Lady Brett Ashley, she was looking at Jake quite coolly, but the corners of her eyes were smiling. Brett stares at Mike, and also after that, he states to the others, including Bill and Jake, that Brett was steering him, and all of these characters were not happy with this act, as Brett was promising with them all that she is their lover, and from time to time she was changing her lover. She was not able to occupy her desire of sexuality, and that he would rather not attend the evening's fight, and she serves as the hub around which all the attentions turn. She was the central point, and around her the revolving persons were like Jake, Mike, Bill, and Cohen, etc. These were the people who were describing their attentions and turning their attentions toward her. The last character, main character Cohen, one of the main characters, he says that I shouldn't wonder if I were in love with her. Apparently, he seems to describe that he is not in the love with her, but inwardly that is a truth that Cohen was in a pretty much love of with Brett Ashley. So he confesses his more than casual interest in Brett, that he says that yeah, I am interested in the Brett Ashley, and that's why he has spent time with the Brett in Saint Sebastian. And while asking Jake for information about her and Jake discussion, Cohen responds quickly to defend the Brett's honor. That Cohen doesn't want to explain or to expose the truth of Brett Ashley in front of Jake. But it is also one of the truth that Jake already had a relationship with Brett Ashley. So here we come to know that Cohen and Jake are hiding the secret from each other. They both already known about that secret. That is some type of thing which has to be talked about, but they are not talking about that thing. But at the end, that was proved that Cohen was wrong, and even Jake was also wrong. That both of them has loved the wrong lady, because she was changing her lover from time to time. She was not a good mannered lady. She was not a girl who had sincerity for one person or one man or one male. She had different division of her sincerity, that at a time she was sincere to all, but at a time she was not sincere to all of them. That she was having a relationship with all the male characters, approximately all the male characters of this novel. So here we are ending our lecture. Hope that you have understood all the things. For references and more studies, you have the references on your screen. You can discuss all the things with me in the comment section below. If you had any confusion in your mind, and or you have any question in your mind, you are welcome and you are free to ask each and everything about this novel. Hope that you have understood all the essential things. Here, The Sun Also Rises has been completed by Ernest Hemingway, and we will discuss its more points in the comment sections below. So that's why hopefully that you have understood all the essential things related to this novel. Stay home and stay safe. It's goodbye from me.